point of devising such a diagram is primarily for self-assessment. You might say, well, we had an argument this week about the kids, and the week before we had an argument about finances. But maybe that's all you can find that fits your current situation. These are common recurring issues that most relationships will encounter at some stage, and encountering some common issues is not necessarily a sign of abuse. Like most diagnostic tools, even in the mental health profession, the point at which you should become concerned is when you find yourself ticking most boxes in the list, as opposed to just a few. It's also possible that you may not recognise some of the attributes listed as being consistent with your experience. So it's important to follow up your self-assessment with a visit to a professional counsellor who can more clearly identify certain attributes. On the power and control wheel, we've learned Courtney, whether deliberately or incidentally, isolated Toby from his friends and family by having him agree to move interstate so she could avoid jail. The move was for her, not necessarily for himself. So let's check that box and see what else we've discovered along the way. Once he was in Miami, she minimised his role in paying his share of the bills, and even used it to manipulate the police and building security for no other reason than to avoid her having to move out. Along with blaming Toby for her misplacing her own phone, I'm sure more examples of this kind of behaviour will come out during trial, but we can easily check off, minimise, deny and blame as well. And as we learned, she wasn't fighting having to move out because she couldn't afford it. She was fighting simply to win power and control, whereas Toby genuinely could not afford to move out. This may encompass financial abuse at some stage, which she is alleging against Toby, but we'll cover this in more detail shortly. We've also learned Courtney was verbally and emotionally abusive towards Toby. Much like in the Depp v. Heard case, in all the recordings we've heard so far, Toby is constantly apologising and she is constantly berating him. So I think we can safely check off using emotional and verbal abuse too. In Toby's pocket recording, we hear Courtney losing her head because Toby dared talk to someone passing by. Setting rules as to who he can talk to or who he can't talk to is part of isolation tactics often employed by abusers. But it also falls into the privilege category because she is not only talking to other men online, she's also flirting with them and even pleasuring them. Rules for thee, but not for me, is playing the privilege card, as is playing the helpless female card. In another secret recording made by Toby, we hear Courtney express her wishes to kill Toby. We also saw the body cam footage where she threw a glass at him, and we also learned that she'd stabbed him twice before. So we can check off force and threats as well as intimidation while we're at it. As Courtney and Toby don't have any children, throwing that into the equation may seem unfair. However, as we saw in the Depp v. Heard case, pets often become the go-to tool for manipulation where children don't exist. And we did hear Courtney manipulate the police using her dog, where she described begging Toby to walk her dog for her. In fact, the day he was killed, he was doing exactly that. walking her dog. Hence, as we come across instances where the dog is used to manipulate others, we'll be checking off the using children section of the wheel as well. Now, this comes down to purely speculation. My opinion, don't sue me, but Toby's one single misdemeanor count on his record may, not saying it does, I'm just saying it may have something to do with allegations she has previously made against him regarding the dog. In fact, if I was a betting person, I'd lay money on it. Which brings us to the topic of this video. But before we do, I want you to take a look at where we are at with the power and control wheel. The prosecution has given us an example of all of these things happening to Toby, not by Toby. And that is why I want to follow this case through trial. I want to see what the defence brings up to prove that Toby was doing any of these things that are considered to be abuse. As it stands, it's not really looking like that's the case. But that doesn't mean it won't change as we get to trial. Now, let's talk about money.
Lawyer. It is a case of self-defense. Without getting into details about what occurred in the apartment, I can tell you that there was a physical altercation between Courtney and Mr. Umbumzelli. At some point, he attempted to choke Courtney. He thereafter charged at her, and she had no choice but to defend herself. She was in fear for her life, and Mr. Umbumzelli was in the act of committing a forcible felony, to wit, a burglary with a battery. We expect the City of Miami Police Department and the State Attorney's Office to close their investigation in the near future.
That was the story her attorney was selling before she was charged and before they knew what kind of evidence or what kind of story the prosecution was going to mount. As the investigation unfolded, the defence's story evolved from a burglary and battery to something else entirely.
Courtney, Clenney's attorney, says just about a week before all this happened, she removed her boyfriend, Christian Obuselli, from the lease because of other domestic violence issues. But apparently, he continued coming back. Ultimately, her attorney says that's what led to this tragedy.
He was not welcome to stay. He was not on the lease, but he did make his way back up to the apartment on several occasions during that week. In today's climate, what somebody says automatically becomes a fact. We need to get back to understanding, wait for the facts to come out. We cannot rush to judgment.
So first he's selling, the black man was robbing her. Then he switched his tune, left out the robbery bit, forgot to mention that he actually lived there and even had possessions in their apartment. Then aims for the next best black scenario, that he's an abuser.
Frank Prieto says that there is competent and substantial evidence that she is the victim of domestic violence and, in fact, possible human trafficking. Do you know what he's talking about?
Have no idea. That would undermine the self-defense, because human trafficking, as you know, is when you prostitute someone for economic reason. You have them against their will, and so if he's suggesting that that is the basis of the motivation behind Ms. Courtney taking Toby's life, that undermines the self-defense within itself. But that is clearly not credible.
Well, is y'all understanding that Courtney's implying that your son was pimping her out?
That's absurd, honestly. This is a woman who has a 2 million following on Instagram as an OnlyFans model, who travels the world, who freely of her own volition goes on podcasts bragging about the lavish lifestyle that she has. There's nothing to demonstrate her being held against her will. We don't even have any evidence to support that Toby was making any money based on the work that she had. The family supported Toby in many ways financially. So for her attorney to suggest that is just further insult to this entire experience.
And now the next best black scenario, he's a pimp. They just keep leveling up from one preposterous accusation to the next. I've looked over Toby's records, and the one misdemeanor charge that he had looks to me like a disagreement over whether or not he took adequate care of someone's pet. There's no thieving or breaking and entering or gang association or pimping. There's not even a traffic offence. In fact, his employment history and education history left me with the impression that he's a geek with an interest in cryptocurrency.
Let's discuss those financial records. Have you reviewed them?
Yes.
Okay. During that time, immediately before the murder, approximately how much money did the defendant have in her bank account?
I believe she had just over $2 million.
We heard from her father in the last episode that the last time he saw her bank account, she had $4,000. The prosecution here asked the detective what's left in her account. He says $4,000. So, $2 million disappears out of her account after Toby's death. Where it went and who has it now is only relevant to the bond hearing because she has a tendency to abscond. What it's relevant to in the trial at a later date is to her allegation that Toby was pimping her out. Just in case you missed it, she said he hasn't paid any rent and I don't care. So which is it? He's a pimp and he's making money off selling you, or he hasn't paid any rent because he's got no money? How many pimps do you know put all the money into her account and keep nothing for themselves? I ain't no expert on pimping, but I do think it actually works the other way around, where he takes most of it and she gets fuck all. It's pretty clear Toby didn't die with any money in his bank account, because otherwise his family wouldn't be asking for money to help bury him. It reads, on April the 3rd, 2022, 27-year-old Toby Obenselli was murdered in Florida a week before his 28th birthday. It is unconscionable to make sense of our new reality, that someone's selfish act ripped Christian away from this world. It is not enough to say we are shocked and hurting. We are utterly devastated. His murder leaves many unanswered questions and creates a void that can never be fixed or filled, not even with time. Christian was extremely compassionate with a desire always to uplift those around him. He did not deserve for his life to be cut short by heinous act of violence. We will never forget his infectious smile that could lift up any room, or his caring spirit. He will forever be remembered by his grandmother, mother, father, brother, extended family and friends. Please keep the entire family in your prayers through this unimaginable, tragic time. Amid our deep grief, we also face a long road to justice for Christian. We humbly ask our community to come together and support us during this time. We need financial assistance to cover post-mortem transportation of the body, funeral arrangements, attorney's fees, litigation, counselling and bills for the family as we seek justice for our beloved brother and son. No amount is too small. All funeral arrangements will be shared at a later time. We are still processing. We can only find comfort that Christian is resting in the arms of the Lord. Thank you and God bless. And they have raised $83,000, which is hardly enough to pay for their solicitor, let alone a funeral. But yes, if he was making money off selling her, then where's the money? Why is it that she has all the money and he has none? Now, have a look at how she reacts when it dawns on her that her attempt to race bait the cops hadn't entirely worked because they didn't even know he was black.
Because, no, I'm serious.
Court.
Can I do that? Where can I
go to court. You have to go to downtown.
How can I make myself first? Because I know him and he would do it. How can I make myself first?
You got to get there first.
175 Northwest First Avenue.
Before
175 Northwest.
Isn't it already on the way?
we have no idea. We don't even know how it looks like.
We don't even know who it is. How do we know that?
Not sure what the terminology is in America, but in Australia we would call that the stunned mullet. Straight away her responses turned to the phone. "Oh, Daddy, it didn't work." As far as financial abuse goes, we know that Courtney was trying to render Toby homeless. We know through her attorney that she attempted to have him removed from the lease a week before she stabbed him. And we know from the body cam footage that she attempted to have building staff remove him from the premises. And then she tried to have the police put a restraining order against him, not realising that she actually had to go to court for that. And we heard her say, with her own mouth, that he wasn't paying rent. However, other bills for the apartment were actually in Toby's name.
As part of the search of the apartment, documents with the victims' names were obtained. And I'm bringing that up in the context of Mr. Prieto talking about the lease and who was on the lease. Are you aware that Mr. Obuselli is listed as a permitted occupant of that apartment?
Objection, reading.
I'm asking if he's aware that that is. You can answer.
Yes.
Okay. Is he a permitted person to enter?
Would I be able to look at the...
Yeah, you can look at if you have the lease. Okay, is your memory refreshed?
Yes.
Was he a permitted person in that apartment?
Christian Obuselli.
Was he?
Yes.
Okay. As part of the documents obtained as part of the crime scene documents from the scene, at any point in time did Miami Police locate an electric bill?
Sorry, say that one more time.
At any point in time did City of Miami locate an electric bill in the name of Christian Obuselli?
I can't remember.
Okay. If it did, it would be in the crime scene photos?
Yes.
Okay. When you went through, did you locate clothing belonging to a male?
Yes.
Did you locate his belongings?
Yes.
Mr. Prieto was discussing with you the defendant having, quote unquote, kicked him out. As a fellow tenant of that unit, would she have been legally...
Objection, Judge. Pause for legal conclusion.
Did she let him back in April 1st?
Yes.
Did she let him back in April 2nd?
Yes.
Did she let him back in April 3rd?
Yes.
So it would appear at this early stage in the process that Courtney was financially abusing Toby. And just as we discovered in the Justice for Suzanne case, we haven't found just one or two instances of normal arguments that couples might have. We have found numerous instances for every single section of the power and control abuse wheel. Now, I believe that there's a trial date set for the 8th of December, but I'll double check just to make sure that it doesn't get pushed forward or hasn't been pushed forward already. And as the trial unfolds, we'll start with a blank slate and we will start from the beginning, checking off each section as it's covered during the trial. What we have here so far is only as it pertains to her getting bond and whether or not she's a flight risk. It certainly isn't all of the evidence that both sides have to make their cases at trial. To close out this episode, I'm just going to leave you with some food for thought. There's two sides to OnlyFans, and I'll leave it up to you to decide which side you think the defence is going to present at trial.
Posting highly provocative, often explicit photos and videos of yourself on the internet for the pleasure of thousands and sometimes millions of anonymous oglers is not most people's idea of smart. So why then are so many young Australian women signing up to show off on X-rated social media sites like OnlyFans? Well, they say it's an easy way to make a fast fortune. They also claim they're not being exploited because they control what they reveal and what it costs. With so much skin in the game, these women are setting themselves up for life. But being risque is not entirely risk-free. Vanessa doesn't go as far as some women on OnlyFans. Her page is more like a modern-day version of Playboy magazine. And it's this that's helped her finally hit the jackpot.
I won't get into exact numbers, but if I wanted to retire today, I could do so comfortably.
Oh, well, you've got to let us in on some of those secrets. Tell me more.
I really don't want to go into exact figures, but I've earned over $1 million.
And now everyone is trying to cash in, from your next-door neighbour to international celebrity A-listers like former Disney star Bella Thorne and rappers Tyga and Cardi B.
You can subscribe to my OnlyFans.
OnlyFans began 5 years ago, but it really took off last year during COVID lockdowns, when the number of people posting skyrocketed from 120,000 to more than 1 million worldwide. And there are now 120 million people paying to have a look.
I feel as though I'm in a relationship with all these people. I really do. But it can't just be like a side hustle or a side hobby. It has to be something that you truly love. You cannot just decide one day, oh, I'm gonna do this because I want to make money. You have to actually genuinely love being a sexual human being.
Hey, babe.
Hey, babe. You won't believe what just happened.
Unlike Ellie, Vanessa Sierra does have a boyfriend in tennis bad boy Bernard Tomic.
My boyfriend.
But when it comes to her newfound career, he can like it or lump it.
When my partner met me, he already knew what I was doing. So I think if someone was to have an issue with it, they wouldn't choose to date me in the first place. I've had a lot of comments saying that I'm using him for his money, and I don't think people realise how much money I earn, to be honest. But it's just funny. I'm definitely not the wag.
So are you the modern-day penthouse pet?
Definitely not. Those girls weren't exactly in control. And that's what Ellie Unlocked is about.
Do you feel as though your work in any way undermines female empowerment?
Absolutely not. In fact, I think it's the opposite. I think it empowers women. I feel empowered posting, and the content that I share makes me feel liberated. I'm in control of what I post, who I talk to, who I am, and that's what I love about it.
But while Ellie and Vanessa are riding a wave of success, there is a dark undercurrent. OnlyFans is now being exploited by criminals, leaving a trail of victims in its wake.
My freedom of choice and how I would like people to perceive me has been taken away from me. I didn't believe it, to be honest. I just thought maybe it was one of my friends joking around with me.
Unfortunately, it was no laughing matter. In fact, Georgia's Instagram account had been targeted by criminals. Sifting through her images, they hand-picked her most provocative shots, using them to set up a separate fake account still in her name. But what really upset Georgia was that the fake account pointed followers to what looked like an OnlyFans page.
I don't want them thinking, oh, okay, she's an OnlyFans girl, like, you know. It honestly made my stomach churn. People would just look at that and be like, okay, there's nudes of Georgia. There's not, but that would be your first thought.
I mean, it's pretty shocking, isn't it?
I have family, I don't want them thinking that.
And you're completely powerless here.
Exactly, I've lost all power of that.
Georgia immediately complained and the Instagram profile was eventually taken down. But it didn't stop there.
Wanted to come down, wanted to come up, wanted to come down, wanted to come up.
How many fake accounts were created?
Oh, God, possibly, from the top of my head, around 10.
10 accounts?
10 plus, yeah.
Pretending to be you?
Yeah.
So is it possible that of these compromised types?
As the former executive director of the Australian Crime Commission, Professor David Lacey is an expert on cyber safety. These days, he runs cyber support service ID Care, which helps victims of identity theft. He's seeing two types of victims. Firstly, it's those like Georgia, whose image is stolen. And then there's the unsuspecting people who click on the link in Georgia's fake profile and suddenly their credit card details are stolen.
For Georgia and people that are in that situation, there's almost a sense of helplessness. Their image is being used and abused to encourage predominantly men to pursue these types of pay-for-view clicks and themselves experiencing credit card related fraud. So I've just typed in under the search bar OnlyFans.
As part of his job, David monitors dark web activity daily. Disturbingly, he's discovered this marketplace openly selling fake OnlyFans accounts for criminals to profit from.
What we call vendors or sellers.
He's specifically concerned about this one. It's a fake creator account. It basically offers criminals a blank canvas where they can con subscribers into paying big bucks for non-existent images of someone like Georgia.
They even say here in the listing description, these are creator accounts that can be used to e-whore cash out, which effectively means that account gives you as a criminal licence to push content, such as Georgia's photos, in a way that's going to entice others to buy your product when it doesn't even exist.
And it's services like David's that are left to pick up the pieces with the victims.
We'd get at least one member from the community engaged with us every hour of the day that are experiencing these types of crimes.
OnlyFans has admitted what happened to Georgia is fast becoming a problem for them. They claim once victims alert them, their copyright team helps in taking down the fake profiles. But David says whatever they're doing isn't enough.
I think any organisation, OnlyFans or any other online platform or service, that is witnessing organised crime exploited has a responsibility to take action.
Are these services doing enough to prevent this kind of criminal activity?
If they are, we're not seeing it. It's a problem that we're going to see persist.
Both Ellie Jean Coffey and Vanessa Sierra have also had their images stolen. But because of their newfound wealth, they have copyright lawyers to fix the problem. Georgia McLeod simply can't afford that.
And is that you actually in that? Those are photos of me, yeah.
But luckily, the 19-year-old found a cheaper and brand new alternative that specifically helps people like her.
I didn't even know that there was a possible way to do that until recently.
Last year, Ashley Harrison's keen eye spotted a niche market. So she set up a new business, Verified Associates, that uses a tailor-made computer program to help victims rid the internet of stolen pictures.
I think that the problem you see with traditional legal systems is they are quite slow, they're quite expensive, and they require a lot of manual input. So the first thing we would do is we would conduct a search on your behalf.
The software program identifies a photo and then literally does a scrape of the internet, banishing the image every time it comes up.
It will begin a very in-depth, deep search.
Then monthly checkups make sure the photo never emerges again.
It's mostly about protecting people's content and enforcing their copyright. You know, a lot of creators who have even been on the platform for some years said, I had no idea a service like this existed or that I could do something about it.
Is there still a stigma attached to the kind of work that you do?
Absolutely, yeah. People will try to shame you for doing what you do, but I think that just reflects who they are as a person.
Do you wonder how 65-year-old Vanessa Sierra will look back at these days?
I'll be like, damn, she was hot.
There are no regrets.
No way. I don't see anything to be ashamed of. I think it's such a backwards way of thinking to think that, you know, you should be ashamed of your body or ashamed of being comfortable in your own skin.
I'm not doing anything harmful. I mean, it's the stigma on women, it's so old now. It's like, we're done with it. I'm a sexual human being, this is what I love doing, so accept it or don't, I don't care. I love what I'm doing.